Skeleton Crew has introduced a new planet to the Star Wars galaxy, the home of Wim, Neil, KB, and Fern, known as At-Atton. This is a perfectly curated, futuristic, Earth-type suburban planet that is hiding a deep and dark secret. So what do we know so far about At-Atton? How does this fit into the Star Wars universe? We're going to talk about all of that today. So make sure you hit that like button, and if you're new here, consider subscribing for more Star Wars content just like this. There's a number of mysteries brought up about At-Atton, but they really fall into one of two categories, talking about why is the planet shut off in their own little bubble from the rest of the universe, and what's going on with all this control and propaganda and what's being taught to these kids and taught to everyone else. What's going on behind the scenes there? So when we talk about first this planet that is shut off from the entire galaxy, we start getting these hints throughout the show about different things that would make us wonder what's really going on here. And one of the big things that's referenced multiple times throughout the episodes is the barrier that's stopping them, or so they think, from getting to the outside world. We even are told that ships cannot go in and out, though we see that that's not really entirely true. But we also know that you can't see past the barrier, that whatever is being shown is stopping the field of view to see the stars, to see the other planets, and it's probably in some way stopping others from seeing the planet as well. And because this barrier exists, as said, no ships are visiting or coming, and no one is leaving the planet. There is no interplanet travel, which is a very rare and strange thing in the Star Wars universe when you think about all the different times our heroes have gone from one planet to the next planet to the next, into hyperspace, to different galaxies. Like, that's kind of one of the appeals of Star Wars. So this sits out kind of as a sore thumb of something really weird is happening if we're talking about no ships coming or going, there's no cargo, there's no resources coming from other planets. They're completely self-sufficient with what they have here on At-Atton. And there's even moments where the Republic is talked about, not the New Republic, not the Old Republic, but just the Republic, which makes you wonder, do they know what's actually happened outside of this barrier, or are they keeping it a secret from everyone there? Who is in the know? Who's not in the know? That'll come up a little bit later when we talk about it. But John Watts even has said that this planet At-Atton is one of like the jewels of the Old Republic. Now, the Old Republic comes even before the High Republic, which would be about 2,000 years prior to the events of A New Hope. So is this a planet that has been hidden for thousands of years? Maybe. And then we get into the issue of credits, money. What is really going on here? And we see multiple different times where the credits that are shown become a big deal, particularly on the pirate spaceport of Borg. We see these credits being something that are highly valued, yet to Wim, they're just his lunch money. Generation Tech, in his video, said this, which I thought was really interesting, about the financial system that's kind of set up here on At-Atton.
Placed on the Erodium standard. Like our own world, which at one time, most currencies were kind of tied to actual precious metals, like gold. At one point, the US dollar, when you had one, you would know that in like Fort Knox or some other safe somewhere in the country, there was a gold bar that backed the value of that money. But then, because of economic stagnation in our own world and also in the Old Republic, reforms of the banking system and an embrace of financial engineering meant that the galactic credit was removed from the Erodium standard and replaced with more basic metals, which had symbolic values tied to the intergalactic banking clan's massive holdings. This is why we have the droids teaching these kids about fungible assets, right?
We take into account the fungibility of multiple currencies by further analyzing the potential risk of loss over time of any ledger.
Gold or Erodium is generally considered more fungible by many than a credit that can be devalued by a central banking system, which of course is what Palpatine would do. He would completely devalue the galactic credit by funding both sides of a terribly destructive conflict. All that money gets thrown down the drain. The galaxy gets a lot poorer. This would ignite a massive economic crisis that would result in Palpatine's huge military stimulus via building the Imperial military. He also replaces the worthless galactic credit with the even more worthless Imperial credit. I think what Wim has here, what he uses to pay for some nasty pirate food, is the equivalent of a gold coin, a solid piece of Erodium that of course the pirates would immediately recognize as something very valuable, especially during the New Republic age, which is post-Republic, post-Empire, post-Palpatine's crazy economic policies. I mean, we're talking about decades of hyperinflation. I wouldn't be surprised if that Erodium coin is worth thousands, if not tens of thousands of credits.
Another aspect of how this planet has been shut off from the rest of the galaxy is either people haven't heard of At-Atton or they've only heard about it in this kind of mythological sense, kind of like the lost city of Atlantis. Does it really exist? No one's ever really truly seen it, so it just now fades into legend, but clearly no one knows how to get there, especially when we see that interaction at the spaceport and the kids are told that this is kind of like a lost treasure planet. You should come up with a better backstory than this. If you're really trying to get home, you should not make it up or not tell tall tales, not tell legends. Tell me the truth and maybe I can help you. Even the droid SM-33 himself, when asked to return to the place they just went from, has no idea or understanding of where At-Atton is. But his ship was crashed on At-Atton. It was buried for years and years, and maybe even longer than the establishing of the society on that planet, because you would think if there was a down ship somewhere on the planet where no ships come and go, they would have dealt with that. And that gets me to my second point, that there's so much control behind the scenes, and what's going on here on this planet leads us to believe that this thought of utopia is actually quite more sinister than that. That this isn't a perfect place. This isn't a perfect place to live and to be. In fact, it's a quite dangerous and nefarious and even dark place. And you see this loss of control, this inability to really do your own thing, to be your own person in so many different ways, even in the ways that the buses and the cars are stuck on tracks, other than the hover bikes that kind of fly wherever they want, much to the chagrin of these security droids. Everyone else is just on this track, on this pattern. They're going to go one place and they can't control where they're going to go. They're just going to go home, go back. It's really this kind of like Truman Show-esque kind of fake feeling setup. That's even furthered by the patrolling of these Ring doorbell droids who have these big camera heads that are just kind of watching and listening to everything, making sure that they know what's going on and uploading it to whoever's in control. That's how they know right where Wim is. That's how they start walking through the forest and find the helmet and the dad. And there's so many of them probably patrolling all over the place. And even in Wim's conversation at the school, when he gives what he wants to do, he's kind of laughed off to say, that's why we have security droids. You don't have to worry about the danger. You don't have to worry about helping other people. That's what we have droids for. And even in that curated school system where they're all sitting in these desks, they're learning about all kinds of weird things. And in fact, again, Generation Tech, I think, did a great job of outlining what is it that they're actually learning. He has a background working in Wall Street, so he can explain this much better than I can. Here's a clip from his video talking about it.
Contrast this method with the approach practiced in planets outside the barrier called liquidity modeling.
This is really interesting, what the droids are teaching. We probably have to go into a deeper dive here to unravel what exactly it all means. But clearly, this is a society that is separated from the wider world by a barrier of some kind. And when the droids are talking about liquidity bubbling outside of the barrier in the wider galaxy, I think they're referring to perhaps the Old Republic's laissez-faire attitude towards governing economics. You see, in the last few centuries of the Old Republic, the federal government's regulatory bodies were extremely weak, and corporate powers essentially started buying seats in the political system. This was cronyism at its worst, and what ends up happening is you had a lot of greedy individuals, basically putting profit above all else and inflating their own assets, inflating entire sectors of the economy, which creates, I guess, liquidity bubbling. And once those bubbles become unsustainable, they collapse. And a lot of people lose their money and get hurt.
And see, this is where these kids' futures are predetermined, pre-decided. They're taught all about this kind of economic bubble that could burst if they don't keep the great work going. They're using fear to motivate and direct, much like a cult would. And so these kids are learning and then taking an assessment test far younger than others would. They're getting put into a track that seemingly is the only way that they're going to be. We see this in the fear of Fern's mom, that her daughter is not going to be at the top 1% of what happens. And as a result, she's worried that her kid is not at the top of the class, because if she doesn't do well on this test, then she'll be forever regulated to some analyst job, meaningless, busy work, just to keep this whole machine running the way that it is. So what then is this great work that's talked about, that is kind of the goal and given as the ultimate of this planet, that everyone's going to participate in the great work? You too have a place in the great work. Some have theorized that this could be connected to the High Republic great works that are talked about. I'm not an expert in the High Republic. I never really got into those novels or any of that lore. If you are, let me know down below what you think. But it really doesn't sound like that. Even though the language is similar, it feels much different, much more nefarious, more just like, you're going to do what is best for this society, and we're going to tell you what exactly that is. You don't have any ambition. You don't get to dream. You don't get to do anything different. You must fit in this little box. This is similar to what we've seen in other sci-fi dystopias, but it would kind of make sense as to why this planet would be shut off from the world. They don't want people like Wim. They don't want people like Luke Skywalker looking off into the sunset or the sun's set and wondering what's out there in the galaxy, what's more than what my planet is. The way that it's kind of put to these kids and controlled with the great work in mind is that this is the ultimate good, that you're going to work for the ultimate good. There's nothing higher that you need to even think about or look for, because this is it. And so we're left wondering what's really going on At-Atton. How is this connected to the wider galaxy? Who's really in charge here? And what connections are there to the New Republic of their timeline? I think there's a number of interesting theories, and I'm going to give you the one that I think makes the most sense. I think At-Atton is probably a planet of great wealth that for some reason needed to remain secret to the rest of the galaxy. Maybe very few knew about it, but they supplied the old Republic with minted credits. And whether it's due to just pure greed or desire to create a perfect life for themselves, they hide away from the rest of the galaxy, drifting off into this legend mysterious place where people eventually forget about or have no idea of, can't find on a star map. For many different reasons, this could be the case. Droids are then used for everything because droids can be trusted after all. This has to be then before the time of the Clone Wars, where afterwards there was a great distrust and even a hating of droids that we see in A New Hope. So even the very use of these droids in all of these other aspects of life to keep everything going in one same direction gives us clues that there's other things going on. Because after all, there isn't very much room at the top of this food chain. The top is very tiny, and only the best of the best and the smartest and brightest, or more likely, those who are not going to buck the system, will make it to that high pinnacle, which is kind of ironic because that's not going to be Fern. Fern, if anything, is the one who's rebelling against the system completely and totally, yet her mom can't see that, so she has to keep up appearances like she's this good little girl who's going to find her perfect place in supplying everything needed for this great work. And like in a cult, all of the people here on this planet seem to buy into the lies of what's happened in the outside world and the safety that this barrier brings and the ultimate good that this work is. They've bought it hook, line, and sinker. They train their kids up in this. Their kids don't question anything outside of it except for Wim. And so it's Wim's adventure that might, for the first time in thousands of years, expose this planet. What type of ramifications is that going to have Is it going to be a case where the parents want to now get off-world to go get their kids, or are the kids going to come back and others find them there? Is there really treasure on At-Atton? I seem to think that they have to be able to mine or have some kind of way to keep making these credits. So I think there has to be something, some minerals or something that they're able to have that makes the planet really rich in resources. Is it possible that this is a critique of AI technology where a world was hidden from outer space and the rest of the galaxy by droids, and so it's all run by this system, and humans and aliens have just kind of been pulled into this system to make the great work happen? Is that what's going to happen here in Star Wars? No matter what it is, clearly At-Atton, I think, is the key to this series, is the key to this show, and depending upon how it's revealed and the answer to some of these questions, I think is greatly going to impact whether or not this show succeeds. Well, now it's your turn to take to the comments and let me know about your At-Atton theories down below. I would love to read those, and if you've made it all the way here to the end and you haven't yet subscribed, hit that button. Hit it on the way down. You can do it. There you go. Thanks. I'll catch you on the next one. Remember, the Force will be with you always. Oh, and by the way, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video. I'm not quite sure which one it is, but they're recommending it to you. So click on it. Find out. Let me know if you like it.